Welcome to our webinar, Solving the Mystery, Business License Compliance Made Easy. My name is Anu Shah and I will be your moderator. Joining us today is Brian Bartnicki. Since the inception of Corporation Service Company, also known as CSC, Licensing Services, Brian has been at the forefront assisting customers with their industry-specific requirements, which range from research, portfolio management, and renewal services. And with that, let's welcome Brian.
Thank you, Anu. Hello, everybody on the line. Just before we start, we're going to briefly talk about CSC. We're a privately held company. We've been in business for over 115 years and been in Wilmington, Delaware, headquartered for that entire time. We're very proud of that. And we have offices all across the world and employ over 2,000 people worldwide. We're a SOC 2 audited company, which is our security standard. And in some capacity, we service 95% of the Fortune 500. And the average tenure of our service organization is 10 and a half years. We're very proud of that with the commitment that our employees give to us here. Now, the agenda. We're going to talk about the case of the missing license. We're going to talk about the scene of the crime, back at our headquarters, the consequences of non-compliance, dossiers of the suspects involved. We're going to develop our case, we're going to close the case, and then we're going to close the webinar and open it up for questions. So to begin, the case of the missing license. So I'm in my office the other day, and I have a private investigator license, and I noticed that it was missing. So it really upsets me because I'm not happy with the fact that someone stole my license. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our sleuthing skills and try to uncover, what it is that, do want to. For those of you that picked the largest quantity, the number that's in the industry that's understood is about 152,000 governing bodies that may issue a license. So what does that mean? And we'll dive into this deeper. We're going to be speaking about multiple levels of government, not just states and counties, but we're even going to dive into cities, boroughs, townships, school districts. There's so many types of authorities throughout the country that you'd be amazed as to where these requirements and what these requirements are. So back to the story. The game is officially afoot, and some licenses that we really want to look for amongst all industries are going to be the following. Maybe occupational licenses, privilege tax licenses, tax receipts or business tax receipts, and professional licenses. For those of you that are in CPA firms, there might be some type of engineering, architecture licenses, more of the professional industry. So while I'm investigating, what happened to my license, I have to start, again, researching, and one of the big challenges is uncovering the facts. So what do we need to find? Well, from a business license perspective, when you guys are researching requirements for your business, some of the challenges that you might face are, how do we start our search? So do I go online? Do I look up city ordinances? Maybe is there a library somewhere? Do I walk into the governing authority and ask? How do we start our search? There's really no blueprint for this. It's pretty much just figure it out on your own. Where are we located? What if our address is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but we fall outside of Philadelphia County, and we might end up in a town called Upper Darby, or I might be in Baltimore, Maryland, and I might be in Baltimore City or Baltimore County. So it's very important that where you're located is researched appropriately, because sometimes you could be in an unincorporated or incorporated area. So starting your search, understanding who governs you, is very important. And again, there's really no blueprint for it. How do we find the time? We're all busy. We have tons of priorities in our daily workday. So trying to just get an hour, get 2 hours, get a week even, depending upon how big the project's going to be, is challenging. And then are there any industry-specific licenses? So for example, all of you probably do different types of business activity, but just to name a few, if you're in the restaurant or hospitality industry, sometimes there might be industry-specific matters in certain jurisdictions if you have seating outside. Or you might have entertainment at nighttime. You might need an entertainment license. Or if you have open flames, you might need a range hood or open flame permit. Sometimes for those of you that have transportation or people going sales door to door, you might need a peddler's license. Or if they're using a company vehicle versus their own car, the company vehicle could trigger a need for a specific license in a particular city or county. For those of you that are in the retail space, if you have a jewelry in your store, you might have precious metal licenses in some cities, believe it or not. And you might even have stuffed animal licenses if you have that available for retail as well. So these are just a couple examples that come up throughout many industries, and I wanted to share them with everyone. But instead of you figuring out the blueprint, trying to figure out where to start, going through the research and spending time that you can invest in other areas, we can help here at CSC. One of the key things I just want to bring up, how we would help in the research space, is the following. First would be for new businesses or new locations. If you want to hypothetically to know what would be needed for you to do X activity in a particular jurisdiction or location, you would complete a questionnaire, and our team here, a very large team in Wilmington, Delaware, would return the blueprint for you, the results, who governed what licenses were needed based on who had the authority to issue them, the applications of those licenses and permits, and then we would deliver that to you in a PDF format. We let you know how much the license costs to obtain, and then also where the license would need to be filed. And we'll get into filing in a second. But before I go into other areas, I want to mention some other research services too. We have something for existing services. It's an audit and gap, where you would give us your existing licenses, and we in turn would tell you what is required, what's missing, and then we'd also audit the status. So we make sure you're in good standing. If you don't have a license, we'll tell you it's needed. And then the third thing that we're going to do is we're going to tell you what you have that's unnecessary. In other words, what you've over-licensed. And we find a lot of value, customers find value in that, because these city ordinances and county ordinances and laws and board rulings, contracting board, security board, all these rules change, pharmaceutical requirements. And so keeping up with what's needed is challenging, and sometimes over-licensure does occur. People will just sometimes, as a safeguard, file every license just to be safe, instead of really filing what they only need to file. Which really leads me to our next area, which is going to be the consequences of noncompliance. So we're going to get into those again now in more detail. Actually, we'll do that right now. We're going to go into filing challenges as well, but we're going to go into consequences of noncompliance. The fines and penalties that can happen. If you fail to have a license, a lot of times what will happen is a jurisdiction will ask how many years you've been operating without a license, and sometimes even to list the gross revenue generated within a location. A lot of times they have a calculation that will come out and let you know how much you owe. Some jurisdictions will just say it's a flat fee, it's $50, it's $100. Whatever it is, you just pay us a late fee. I wish they were all like that, but they're not. Usually there's some type of formula that comes into play when it comes to fines. As a result, for lawsuits, sometimes if you're in the grocery store industry, if you don't have your health permits in line, or any type of restaurant, if you don't have grease trap permits, or you don't have the correct range hood in place or fire permits, right? There can be lawsuits happen if anything were to occur. Slip and fall, for example, at a grocery store. You see, cleanup. A lot of times we've all seen that with the caution wet floor. If you didn't have a license in order, again, for whatever reason, there was meat again on the ground, some type of juice on the ground, again, it could be an issue. So making sure to prevent litigation, then it is something that can happen. Business closure and arrests are two things that I want to tackle together. We have had instances where customers have come to us in urgent scenarios because their locations have been shut down. It is not uncommon for this to happen. There's one that I always tell people just because it's very just always ingrained in my mind. Because I had a customer call once, frantic, in North Las Vegas. They had a retail location, and this location, the assistant manager failed to renew their $50 license in North Las Vegas, Nevada. It was a city license that they had to renew as a business tax receipt. They did not renew it. About 2 weeks went by, and eventually what happened is the police department came and shut down the location. And additionally, the capstone of this is that the store manager was arrested, and his employer had to pay to bail him out of jail. And what made it worse is that this occurred on a Friday afternoon around 3 o'clock, which resulted in the company not being able to do business over the weekend because the government was not open during the weekend. Of course, this seems like a worst-case scenario. It happens more than you think. Another one that I want to bring up is the inability to bid on opportunities. For those of you that are in contracting or any type of job where you need to bid or have something in place prior to making your offer, sometimes it's a temporary license you may need. It's imperative that those are in place to proceed. If you don't have everything in order from a licensing perspective when you're bidding, there's a great chance that you may not be awarded the bid or even have the opportunity to have the business. So believe it or not, licensing does come into play from a due diligence perspective when you have vendors or potential partners that are looking to do business with you. Delay introducing a new product or service. Anybody here, if you're familiar with the alcohol distribution, manufacturing, or perhaps I always use toys as an example I like to bring up. If you are manufacturing toys or distributing product, a lot of times you won't be able to introduce that or get your product out into the market if your facilities or where you're basically shipping those goods from is not licensed appropriately. So that is something to keep into mind. Again, you can't necessarily start doing that work until everything's in order, and it will delay the process. And really, the final item for consequences is going to be negative press. I always tell our customers that their brand is everything. It's how your consumer knows you. And we want to make sure, everyone wants to make sure, of course, that there's no negative press associated with being non-compliant. If you were non-compliant for any permits, if you were a hotel and you didn't have, permits for your spa, or you didn't have any, laundry room permits, or, if you're a restaurant and you didn't have entertainment permits. Again, these are just random examples. Or you're in the wine, you don't have your label in order, and you try just to sell wine without your label being approved. Again, these are terrible things that can happen, which will create negative press out there. Again, your locations will be shut down. That will create negative press a lot of times by default, which is what we don't want. So to prevent that from happening, of course, once you do the research, we need to make sure that we're filing the licenses. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to headquarters and we're going to file the evidence that was found. So once we do the research, we're going to file everything and get you on the books and make sure that you're in compliance. So one of the challenges that we all run into is where do we file? A lot of times there's no instruction where to go ahead and file. There may not be instructions. There may just be a P.O. box. Do we have to file in person? What is the way in which we make this happen? How do we check the status of the application? I'm sure everyone on the line, if you've gone through this process, you have had a scenario perhaps where you try to call and check on the status of your application, and you find out that the office is only open 3 or 4 days a week, and the hours are from 10 to 3 o'clock, and at lunchtime from 12 to 1, they don't take phone calls. And it's incredibly frustrating when you're trying to get evidence in hand. You're trying to ask if they can email you evidence or fax it to you, or if you can send someone to pick it up because you're trying to coordinate a courier or parcels to go get it because you need it to do business, and you can't get a hold of anybody. The stress of dealing with that in these crunch scenarios is incredibly intense. And of course, it takes time out of your day to focus on other priorities that you have. And really, to go back to that is you can't really expedite the order. For those of us that have dealt with Secretary of State filings, we're very familiar with having states like Delaware, California, New York, and many, many, many other states, majority of them, have the opportunity for you to spend a little bit more money and have something done pretty quickly, usually within 24 hours, or even within an hour in some jurisdictions, which is wonderful. But when we're talking about local municipality, counties, boards that need to actually meet and review and accept an application through a process of review, that is something that is very, very difficult to expedite. So if you need our help, we'd love to help you with, is you can have us do the research again, as I mentioned, but then we can prepare and file the application. So we would complete the application on your behalf, send it to you for signature. If we can file it online, we'll file it online. We will coordinate the delivery. We will coordinate advancing the fees, cutting the check, following up on it, and once it's approved, upload it into your account and deliver the evidence to you directly. So that way you do not have to worry about the headache that comes with filing. So now that we've gone through all this, I want to go back to my story about how someone stole my private investigator license. And again, I told you it was very frustrating. And I've dealt with, there's some, dossiers of suspects of the people that I think are the culprits. And the first is Penalty Pete. And for all of you that don't know Penalty Pete, he's a genius mobster. And he really likes to stir up trouble in the city and county. And he's really known for habitually never paying his parking tickets. He owes all these parking tickets to the city, and he's just known for it, which is why we all call him Penalty Pete. And there's Non-Compliant Nate. He's more of a rogue mobster who has all these corrupt businesses across the city, but he just jumps from place to place, and you really can't get a handle on him. But he just fails to apply for licenses. He just ignores them. He doesn't do any research or anything. He just opens a company and runs to the next. And then we have Blasphemous Beck. He's the outlandish-speaking kingpin out there. He never files his business licenses, and he's constantly slipped through my grasp all the time. I consider him my arch nemesis, and he's, again, one of the other suspects that I think might have stolen my private investigator licenses. So I did the research. I'm now going to take the filings and file the evidence, but before I present it to get a warrant, I need to really create a portfolio of all the licenses that I have. So I'm going to create a portfolio, and usually when I create my portfolio, I need to make sure I have a couple things. Number one, the challenge that I have is really knowing when all these authorities are going to require renewal. I have all these licenses. As I mentioned, city ordinances, county requirements, state renewal dates based on your industry, they're all over the place. When are they required to be renewed? Beyond that, I have to manually track all of them, and that's incredibly frustrating because having perhaps an Excel spreadsheet or an Access database or some other medium in which I'm managing this, making sure that I have everything in a clean, can help with that. I have on your CSC account, if you account with CSC, we have a business license portfolio management system. Manage it for you. So you would have a contact here at CSC who would be an extension of your licensing department or your legal department or compliance department, and that individual would be responsible for advancing all the fees, filing the licenses, updating your portfolio, and sending the evidence to your locations or right to you wherever you wanted them to go. We can have the address changed for renewal notices to come to us. That way you don't have to worry about it. And we can manage that process from start to finish. As you research, as you open new locations, we can research the requirements. We can file the requirements. We can renew the licenses. It's truly a turnkey process where you send us the data you have, and we're going to put it in here and help you as needed. So with that being said, I just want to go back to my issue, which is the stolen private investigator license, and let you know that I issued a warrant, get a warrant approved from the judge, and Blasphemous Beck was guilty. I'm very proud of that. I've been trying to track him down for years, and he finally got him. So once I have that in place, I got the license back. I'm going to post it right here back on the wall. Now I'm officially back in business, and my case is closed. But on our side, I want to see if anyone has any questions. I'm here to answer any that you have. In all industry matters, just please feel free to ask, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Brian. That was great. We will now open up the Q&A session. Also on the screen, we have... Great. Thank you. So that is all the time we have today. If we didn't get to your question, we will contact you with a response after the webinar. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope to see you next time.